Welcome to the Myofascial Health Podcast, hosted by me, Unu. Follow along as I explore the depths of John Barnes' myofascial release approach on my road to mastery. Along the way, I'll be sharing the lessons I learn as I open my myofascial release practice in Austin, Texas, so that you don't have to make the same mistakes I do. Welcome back to the Myofascial Health Podcast. Now, I am joined by a very special guest. She has been a massage therapist for 22 years. She identifies as an educator. She's a myofascial release therapist in Whistler, Canada, and she just wrote a book called Journey into Fascia. It is my pleasure to welcome Magdalena Regdos. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hello, Unu. It is such an honor to be here on your amazing podcast and share more information on the passion that we both share, and that's myofascial release.
Specifically with John Barnes. And on that topic, can you just kind of let my listeners know how you got into this work?
Well, it was a few years ago, back in 1999. I was studying kinesiology, and I was looking at a career of more hands-on and feeling like kinesiology is a great start and sports medicine is the direction that I wanted to go in. And I just felt drawn to do something that was a little bit softer in the human exchange. So at that time, my program at university was very computer data analysis orientated, and I felt called to learn about what were the physiotherapists and the massage therapists doing that helped people to actually just, at that time I was also an athlete, a soccer player, and just seeing my colleagues on the soccer field, get an injury and then go to physio, go to massage therapy, and be able to get back out on the field. I was like, these guys are doing magic and I want to learn it. And I actually got an injury myself. I pulled one of my leg muscles during a soccer game and experienced that beautiful recovery of hands-on therapy through visits to my massage therapists and my physio. And it just caught my attention. On top of that, I got this other, injury when I decided to dive into massage therapy school, of being this type A personality. I don't know if any of your listeners are keeners and scholars and just want to learn everything and do the best. Well, that was me in my massage therapy career. And I was taking notes and my shoulders were getting tighter, and I just couldn't let go, and nobody could figure out why my shoulders were so tense. It was a bit of a mystery, and nothing was showing up on x-rays and nothing was helping until I went to see a myofascial release practitioner in my area and literally had this magical session where he put his hands on my shoulder. I was in a seated position and I just felt my whole body melt, probably within 5-10 minutes of the session. And I revisited him a few times and just found myself more relaxed, less tense, still able to graduate my massage therapy school with the highest overall average, but in a mellow way. And I got hooked.
So that's very cool. I also was a kinesiology major, and I think I found myself liking academics and sports, and that's what ultimately got me to choose physical therapy. Can I ask, how did you choose to go into massage therapy versus physical therapy?
That is a great question. I think it just seemed to be the way the way that my life propelled after doing my kinesiology. I think just realizing this, I guess there was an inner knowing that we're equipped with this information from the day that we're born, and kind of learning about the ancient methods and realizing that it doesn't really have to be really complicated. And massage therapy school at that time was a 2 year program. And I think physio might have been a little bit of a longer program. So I was like, how can I catapult myself into sharing this information as quickly as possible? And since it's actually become a 3 year program in Canada, so I kind of lucked out in terms of having a 2 year education and then constantly doing continuing education to keep receiving the treatment and staying up to date with any new information that's out there.
Perfect. And so when you were making this decision, did you already have your myofascial release experience where you're like, ooh, I just found out what this myofascial release is. I feel it in my body, and now I'm going to build a life to attain that? Or is it in the opposite order?
It was in the opposite order. I actually have a family member who has very pronounced scoliosis, and I saw them go through the medical system in a way that just wasn't very helpful, in that they were prescribed medications often. And somewhere along the way, I received a massage treatment kind of in between my soccer career and university, and witnessing this family member going through the pains and trials of kind of pain medication therapy and not getting a lot of results, where I started to piece it together, where I was able to feel better, you know, in my recovery from the soccer injury, and then maybe applying intuitively, hands on, to my family members, or kind of just, I feel like it was just an intuitive je ne sais quoi decision that led me to 22 years later being more passionate about it than ever before.
That's awesome. And so you have this experience with myofascial release, and then do you start taking seminars, or how long in between you feeling what it was before you started becoming an MFR therapist?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was very fortunate during my schooling in 1999. My instructors had known about John Barnes therapy and they recommended his approach, and that's how I received that treatment. And then once I graduated, I did a like an integration. It was called a fascial integration course, and I remember we did a 5 person unwinding. It was through an osteopath, and at
Hmm.
that point, I didn't realize that it was the John Barnes kind of approach that really made this work slightly different from maybe that very aggressive soft tissue mobilization myofascial release. And I just kind of took it, I guess, as like a special interest class, maybe that year of graduating, 2001, of massage therapy school, and decided that I had studied so much that I'm going to take a break from any more books and courses and go live my life. And I moved to Whistler and opened up my practice and started sharing and practicing on everybody and anybody that I could. And I also got the travel bug. If you've ever been to Whistler, it's a world class destination resort. So you meet people from all over the world. So we started to get invites to go visit everybody all over the world. And in particular, in my 20s, the fun thing to do in the off season was to go to Thailand. And
Mm.
being the dedicated healer slash educator and healthcare pro that I am, I guess, from the inside to the core, when I was planning this tropical vacation to Thailand, I was like, how could I learn more about massage therapy while I'm gone? How could I make this beneficial for my clients and my profession? So I signed up for Thai massage and I found this amazing school. It was the traditional Thai health center, I believe, up in Chiang Mai. And I started to notice again that kind of je ne sais quoi aspect of thinking outside of the box. So, in Western medicine and in physiotherapy school, massage therapy school, we're very data orientated, very anatomy language, right? And going to Thailand and learning about this spiritual aspect and holistic aspect really started to make me think there is a bigger picture of how we can help people when we, yeah, think outside the box.
That's amazing. That's so cool that you got to travel the world and kind of learn things that you wouldn't have otherwise been exposed to. I think traveling really helps you see the world from eyes that aren't your own. Because I think sometimes when we live in our little bubble, wherever you're at, then you kind of do the same things day to day. But when you
Yeah.
travel, hopefully something that you try to do is learn the culture that you're traveling to. And that gets you to step outside your own comfort zone, and it allows you to broaden your perspective. And I'll say that I learned the most about myself when I have the opportunity to travel. Now, something that you had mentioned is that going to Thailand, you learn things through a spiritual lens. Whereas in Western culture, it's very science driven. What's the data? Where's the proof?
Hmm.
Were you receptive to that? And how did you integrate that in your practice? Because once you come back to the States, I'd imagine the people that you're around are like, well, where's the data? How did you make that shift?
Yeah. I think I had developed some pretty good credibility in my community because I had such a high academic approach and academic achievement in my education that when I came home with this new piece of information that I was linking to registered massage therapy, it was very well received, and I think people were so excited to experience something new. So I essentially came home and I rounded up my colleagues and I did a workshop with them on Thai massage. And I just shared everything I could learn and or anything I had learned, all my favorite bits and pieces. And it was very well received. And I think the most important thing at that point for me was to just not complicate it, just to show them an experience and help them or allow them to experience it. And it just feels good. It feels good to, have your abdomen worked on when you have a shoulder injury. There's actually a connection there, lo and behold. So it was very well received.
That's awesome. It sounds like you've been directed with certain aspects of your life. Like, for example, you had people around you who recommended for you to seek out John Barnes' myofascial release, or
Yeah.
you went to Thailand and learned these things. Do you
Mhm.
find that when these things are happening, because I would say that it's I don't know if it's common, but I would say I've been around people where they have more similar experiences to me, where you kind of take this leap of faith, not really knowing what it is. It's not like I was someone who got treated to learn the work. I very much got introduced as a therapist and was like, okay, well, I think this could help people. Let me see how deep this rabbit hole goes. And it's still going. So, how did you go about how did you go about following, whether it be your intuition or the guidance, and did you ever question it?
I did question it because I come from a family that has very high standards in terms of education, and massage therapy, it's kind of been through the ringer in terms of gaining respect. 22 years on, it's definitely up there. We're considered primary healthcare providers, but I feel like I was in that pioneer stage of massage therapy in Canada, anyways, being recognized as a very serious and helpful and professional health profession. So, but what does my dad call me? I think my dad says I'm very spirited. So, even though I had some of this resistance about maybe I'm not choosing the most effective way to help people, which is my passion, I think, when I was a little girl, I dreamed of being a doctor like my grandmother and my grandfather were. And I think just as I grew up and as I just started to get a little bit of life experience, I started to notice that maybe the way that our healthcare system was going, being a doctor wasn't going to be exactly the way that I was going to be able to touch as many lives as I could in the way that I do. And somehow massage therapy seems to be it.
It seems like it's worked out for you. I mean, you've got your own practice. It seems like you followed the spirited path, which is why you're at where you're at. Now, can I ask, you said you moved to Whistler and immediately started a an MFR practice. And is that something that's generally encouraged, or how did you take that step to start your own practice, especially moving into a brand new area?
So that is not exactly what happened. Sorry if that's what I'd said in my excitement. What I did is, as soon as I graduated massage therapy school on the east coast of Canada, I moved to Whistler and started practicing massage therapy. And
Hmm.
again, how did I end up in Whistler? Essentially, I followed my sister who had moved to Vancouver a couple years prior. And being an East Coast gal, all the cool kids moved to the West Coast, it seemed. Especially dating back to high school. I was like, why were all these people that I love going out west to ski or snowboard? I didn't get it. And when my sister did it as well, I went to visit her and just realized the mountains here and the energy here, it's just next level. So wanting to be close to my sister and coming from a small town, to me the perfect fit was Whistler, and I made a deal with myself. I said, okay, you're going to go to Whistler. And I didn't know anybody there. Actually, the only person I knew was leaving the next day. He was moving away. And I said, if you get a job offer, you'll stay and you'll test it out for a year or two. And then you always have your East Coast foundation to fall back on if you need to. And I hit the village stroll with my resume and went to some of the spas and I went to a few of the clinics. And I ended up getting 3 job offers that first day that I tested the waters in Whistler. So I thought to myself, okay, this could be a good fit. Fast forward to 22 years later, we're doing okay.
You're doing fantastic. So, okay, so you moved to Whistler. West Coast is the best coast.
Yeah.
And it is pristine. I've gone to climb in Squamish, and it is just a beautiful area. So when you're talking about the mountains, like I'm from Texas and we don't have mountains here. But there
Mm,
is something about when there's a huge mountain that you see every day that for
mm,
me makes me feel small and it makes me feel at peace. And so I always love traveling to especially these nature places, and Whistler seems to be a great spot for that. Now, how long were you just a massage therapist? Not just a massage therapist. How long were you working for somebody before you just decided to start your own practice?
That's a great question. The first 5 years of my career, I chose this clinic where the owner became my mentor. I was just so honored to be involved with her on a professional level, to see how she runs business, to see how she provides healthcare, and it was just the perfect scenario. And I got free time to learn how to, well, not learn how to snowboard, but become a snowboard instructor. So early 20s, we're full of energy. We could just go for days. I decided that I wanted to teach snowboarding a few days a week and offer massage therapy. So I was just kind of busy but loving life full time. And that lasted about 5 years. And then things shifted at that place, and I moved on to test out the waters at a spa, which was beautiful setting, but not my jam. And then I found a physiotherapy clinic that was amazing to work with. And that was right around the time where I started to seek John Barnes seminars. And I started to notice that I kind of wanted to have a myofascial release headquarters where anybody walked through the door of my clinic, it was clear what to expect because I found it started to get a little bit confusing with some of the no pain, no gain approach that, some therapists had versus the let's see how gently we can get in here so that you can release more completely. So it just became, as I got deeper into my myofascial release practice, I felt like for the safe space of my clients, it was the best case scenario to open up my own place to make it less confusing.
I love that. I think you are able to make this step, which a lot of people have fear around, and it's just seeming like you're just following, whether it be your intuition, your spirited nature, or whatever. But it's cool to hear you set up with an idea of, maybe you take the risk out, right? I think I heard you say, I'm going to try this Whistler thing, and if it doesn't work out, I'll always have the East Coast to go back to. And
Mm-hmm.
I think once you take the fear out of it, then you can take those next steps. And I know
Yeah.
that at least for me, when I was deciding to start my own practice, there were a lot of fears, right? Like, is it going to work? 90% of businesses fail. I don't know what I'm doing. But I think I came to this point of like, you know what? Like, I'm not happy at my job. And this is a risk that I've been thinking about for 2 years. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's worthwhile for me to take the risk and see what it's about and try it. And if it fails, then I can always get a physical therapy job. It's like, and so when I thought of it like that, it's like I have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Like worst comes to worst, right where I'm at, and I'm not happy. So why not just take the risk? And so I kind of love that you say that because you kind of take the fear out. I think a lot of time in myofascial release, we talk about that. Channel 5 is fear based, and we get told to follow certain rules or act in certain ways because of society, school, your parents, your culture. Whereas what John teaches is, life is all about enjoying your life. All
Mm-hmm.
these principles, spread more love. I think that's something that you like, that I hear in you, where you're like, I have a passion for helping people with their pains and their injuries. And so I love that you were able to take that risk. Now, you open to practice, and is it just you, or do you have other therapists working with you?
Right now, it's just me. It's a two clinic or a two treatment room clinic, and I am open for collaboration. It's been a beautiful journey. So, in my latest location, because I've had two clinics in Whistler now, my latest location, I've been here 6 years now. So, we had, six therapists, all different modalities working together right before COVID. We all just dispersed during COVID. That just shifted everything for so many people. And then since then, during COVID, my passion of helping people grew even more because I was stuck at home by myself thinking, what can I do? How can I help? And I started to film these self care sessions. And on Zoom at that time, I felt that the quality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, wasn't as amazing as I want it to be for what these self care sessions have become. So when my clinic reopened, I got too busy to do the live Zoom online sessions with my patients, but I decided that I wanted it to be an on-demand series that they could do that I could refer them to anytime. So I happened to meet this amazing man at this right around the same time who happens to be equally as passionate in his career of filming, directing, sort of thing. And we just merged forces and started to create this product that is going to help millions and millions of people, is the dream. But that turned into taking some space up in my clinic. So it became very convenient that everyone dispersed during COVID because we could come in and film whenever we wanted undisturbed. So again, it was this blessing in disguise.
You got it. And I think we all have that, right? I think sometimes when we run into obstacles,
Mhm.
we tend to play the victim. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened to me. This is the worst thing. But what I
Mhm.
hear that you did is you saw it as an opportunity. So even though people disperse, you're like, hey, I have this clinic space, and then you met somebody who could work with you and build this product that you guys are both passionate about. Now, was that the journey into fascia, or is that a different thing?
That is what today we call the journey into fascia.
Perfect. And then what is that exactly for those of my listeners who are unfamiliar with fascia and myofascial release?
Well, it is, I think it's literally the first of its kind of a home care program that's designed to help everybody, literally everybody and anybody who has tension in their body and would like to take a little bit more of a active role in their healthcare. So the fascial system has been ignored in healthcare for a very long time, and I'm including it into self-care. I'm including my fascia release techniques and self-treatment essentials on a very cerebral level where I get into that in the program. You don't even need to know what fascia is. You just need to know that you want to feel better and improve your health and maybe even be able to communicate with your healthcare provider a little bit better and begin the program, because I get into all of that. What is fascia? What is myofascial release? How can it help you? And and then we practice feeling into your body, practice learning anatomy, learning that my if I have a headache, that might be related to the fact that my hips are a little bit out. Oh my gosh, what does it even mean when my physiotherapist says that my hips are out? So I take people on a 30-day journey, and it's videos that are about 25 to 50 minutes in range. They were meant to be 30, but again, the passion made me incapable of cutting them down. But somewhere from 25 to 50 minutes daily, I encourage people just to, yeah, have a glass of water ready, maybe a little do not disturb sign on their door, where they tune into their body, feel into their fascial voice, and start to eliminate tension in the body, free up the fascial system, and address maybe chronic pain. So, decreasing headaches, balancing hips, and getting into a practice of daily self care, which I think is so important. And that's how people will get the ultimate results, in injury recovery or even injury prevention. I feel a daily self care routine is essential.
It is essential for sure. I'll be honest, like, even though I'm a myofascial release therapist, my self-care is not that great. I think once you start your business, it's easy to be stuck in your head of saying, "Hey, I need to do these things," or there's a never-ending to-do list. And John will say something like, just treat yourself 5 minutes a day, at least 5 minutes a day, and that will help. And I think it's one of those things where you don't value your health until you lose it. They say that a man with good health has a million wishes, but a man with bad health only has one wish, and that's to be healthy again. Now,
Mhm.
for someone like myself, I guess what would you say to get me to take my self-care more seriously, to do it more consistently?
Yeah, I would say get involved with Journey into Fascia and
Okay.
experience it for yourself. I think I make it so simple to engage that the goal and what I hear with participants is that they really start to look forward to it, or they start to notice that maybe some things that they've been doing for a long time that haven't been as effective, they find nuggets in the program that they can go to and find relief within, yeah, within 5 minutes. But also, why not give yourself 30 and see what happens beyond that? So I feel like I need like a fun catchphrase to get you hooked. So let's just see. Oh my gosh, we're brainstorming now.
I know. Okay.
Well, actually, let's just chat about why haven't you signed up?
Well, okay. Why haven't I signed up? Well, I just learned about it. I thought it was a book, so I am unfamiliar with exactly what it is. You
Oh,
know,
awesome.
I thought that you wrote a book, but it sounds like it's a book in addition to an online course for self-care. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. It's a lot. Like I
Yeah.
said, the type A personality from 22 years ago, she's mellowed out, but she's still here. So yeah, the book is a companion. It's the supplementary guide to the meat and potatoes of the program, which it's just designed to make it so easy for people, for you to remember, as an expert therapist, as a first time receiver of myofascial release. Remember to let go of thinking and wondering if you're doing something correctly, and
Mm,
have a tool like this video that I've created to be able to follow along and turn off any of that channel 5 thinking and get yourself into feeling. So I've created a beautiful soundtrack to some of the exercises. There's really amazing grounding meditations.
mm.
We go into all of it. It's like it's the essentials. I can't. Yeah, it's like a boot camp for your self-care. And I think, this is common in yoga programs. You've heard of 30-day challenges, you've heard of boot camps where, you're aiming to build your biceps or tighten your abs, or I know that you're into rock climbing, so you might do a very intense rock climbing prep for something that you have what is that called in rock climbing? You have it's not a target, it's a
A grade, trying to
grade.
send it, get to the
Yeah,
top.
yeah, you have a goal in with your rock climbing. Well, and then this program, it's to help you achieve your healing goal. It's the self-care that includes your fascial system, which includes your intuition and your data, your anatomy. We blend it together, which I think is the first of its kind, where you can really sit back and nurture your channel 5, nurture your channel 3, and come out of it with less tension in your body, more confidence, less fear. We get into trauma release.
Mm.
It's all the things. And yeah, you can revisit the videos to get more out of it. But again, you kind of get what you need as soon as you press play. You kind of choose, how the right thing shows up at the right time.
You
You
got
pick what resonates with you, and then you move on. And and as a therapist too, I know for myself, I'm prescribing home care exercises for clients for 22 years now. This is a wonderful resource to give to, my clients, to give to your clients, and know that they're going to actually do it how you would like them to do it, because we've broken it down into steps and it's easy to follow.
I love that. I think it's for the person going through the program, but in addition to that, what I just heard you say is if you're an MFR therapist, you can also utilize these videos to send to your patients and clients so that, hey, it's already done, and then it just kind of adds to this myofascial web.
Yeah.
Now, something that you said was really interesting is that, a lot of times you got to get out of your head. I think a lot of us fear that we're doing the things incorrectly or wrong. And
Yeah.
so we kind of get stuck in our head and say, oh man, these are the pros, these are the cons. Hey, if I do this, then I'm expecting this outcome. And
Yeah.
and it just puts this extra stress and pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas what John teaches us is we just need to be centered and present and grounded. And I think that I know that grounded is a yoga term that gets thrown out or thrown around pretty often, but it's this idea of being centered, grounded, and present, where instead of you having to think about what you need to do, you allow the answer to come to you. It's like knowing without knowing. And that is something that I'm only now starting to trust a little bit more, because sometimes when I'm not doing something, I will feel guilty because I feel like I should be doing something. But I
Mhm.
think that's the wrong mentality to have. And if you're a business owner or you're thinking about starting a business, that will burn you out, right? Versus if you genuinely are following your purpose, and
Mhm.
with you, it's, or all of us myofascial therapists, hopefully it is to help the client and patient who trust you enough with their health.
Yeah.
And if that is your purpose,
Mhm.
then you will allow the things to naturally develop and not to rush it. I think I always like going into nature, and something about nature is like all these things will develop, the trees, the ponds, fountains, all these things will develop. But it
Yeah.
doesn't ever seem like nature is in a rush. Whereas for
Yeah.
us, whereas for us, we're always in a rush. You go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. And so it's
Mhm.
learning that, and I think what I'm hearing in your program is you teach people how to get into this space to see what it feels like. And if you are just in this space for 5 minutes to 30 minutes a day, then you will see the positive impact it has not only on your life, but your health as well. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of Mother Nature, so if I go through the format, so week one is essentially there's three pillars to myofascial release. We get into structural, very anatomical. That's probably the most analytical aspect of myofascial release that there is, and we kind of dive into that during week one. Week two, we get into unwinding, and one of the days is literally called Mother Nature, where we talk about exactly what you just said. We all know this, but it's a matter of just having it on repeat in our lives. That nature never hurries, but all the seasons come. The sun will always rise. We might not always see it, but he's always there, and it will always set. And a whole bunch of events and activities may happen in between, but you don't have to hurry to make it happen. So that's one of the kind of core theories and topics that we get to throughout the program. And then week three, we get into rebounding, which is a whole oceanic experience and
Mm.
really about letting go and being willing to go into the unknown and still coming out of it stronger, healthier, more connected, and circling, and then we do a bit of repetition to really ingrain any and all of those aspects. And it's so much fun because eventually what I find and what I'd love to see people doing is using the videos year round. I've got it chaptered so you can, go into any of the days at any particular time. If you're feeling like you want to touch in on your mental health, then we get into day 6. There's a few topics and techniques about that. There's some journaling exercises. If you feel like you've got plantar fasciitis, you can't quite kick it, there's a couple of days that are specifically turned on the attention to treating plantar fasciitis. And then we get into the whole concept of diagnostic labels, pros and cons. Can we get beyond the labels? Like, yes, your foot hurts, but what if we just put that label aside and let your fascial voice emerge? Maybe there's an emotional component that's keeping your foot bound. So as a myofascial therapist, we open up the can of worms in the body. We open up the fascial web and your healing intelligence with this knowing that it's nothing that you can't handle.
Perfect. So something that you had mentioned was mental health. I think that is a topic that has become more relevant in today's day and age. Whereas
Mhm.
before, it's just like, yo, you just got to do it, right? So
Mhm.
I love that your program actually addresses that.
Yes.
Um, what can you share any insights as to why that might be important and anything along those lines?
Yeah. Well, I think because we are, mainly physical therapists and massage therapists, I feel like our superpower is the physical body. And when healthcare was being kind of formed, was that 300 BC or something? I get into the history of healthcare a little bit too in the course, but many, many, many moons ago, the human being got compartmentalized. So the doctors took the body, the church took the spirit, psychiatrists took the mind, and everything. You had to go to all these different places. And if you had a sore shoulder, you know, the physiotherapist wasn't really gonna, I don't know, explore what's happening at home that might be causing your shoulder to be tight. But that mental stress of what's happening at home could be holding you in this tight ball of tension. So we embrace that and we keep the dialogue open and we acknowledge that as a human being, we are physical. We have thoughts and we have a mind and we have emotions that all deserve to be acknowledged and treated with respect, with gentleness, and with an open awareness. So we get into that from a very loving, grounding, non judgmental perspective. And, there's very extreme cases of mental health where we do need to have a team. We do need to have, just a web of support beyond the myofascial release clinic, any myofascial release clinic. So being open to collaborate is essential, but also being open to start the topic or start the conversation on mental health, I think can take a lot of pressure off of people.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to unpack some of the things for my listeners to understand a little better. I think something you'd mentioned is like something that John says is our society has adopted a reductionistic healthcare model, meaning we believe that if we break things down to its smaller components, if we understand the smallest components, then we can use transitive property to say, hey, we understand the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that's not necessarily the case. I think as myofascial release therapists, we can see through the fascial system that everything is literally connected, right? It's this fluid that is so different from what you would expect, and it has properties that allows you to act in different ways, in addition to holding some traumas, holding emotions, and then even photons and the lights and stuff that goes through your fascial system.
Mm-hmm.
And John does a great job of saying, hey, we need to be able to put the human back together. We need to be able to address not only the physical component, but the energetic component, the spiritual component. And just like you said, I think a lot of times people will say, I have an injury or my back hurts, right? And if you go to a Western healthcare facility, they might say, oh, you've got whatever, slip disc or compression. But
Mm-hmm.
there is a emotional component to everything. And that never gets addressed. Like you said, we have emotions, right? We feel things, we have our own thoughts. But traditional healthcare will say, oh, you're just a bag of chemicals. If you're feeling depressed, take these antidepressants. If you are having this symptom, take this medication that has the opposite, right? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
what we learn to do with myofascial release is treat the person. I tell all of my patients, like, hey, you're coming in here for a shoulder injury, but I'm treating you as the person, right? So how I would treat you if you're a rock climber is going to be drastically different than I treat a grandmother, right? They might have shoulder injuries, but they're two different beings. And it's me being able to meet them where they're at and help them work towards the goals that they want. It's not just a protocol. I hate protocols, right?
Mm-hmm.
John says that there's 8 billion people in the world and the fascial patterns are going to be 8 billion different ways. Or sorry, 8 billion.
Yeah.
And so with that, it's like you can't have a cookie cutter approach. And John teaches us myofascial release, which is more of an art form, I would say for myself. I think for me, part of the reason why I started my own practice is because I feel like my way of doing physical therapy or myofascial release therapy is a artistic expression of how I can help somebody. And
Mhm.
whenever I was working for a insurance-based clinic where they're stacking you multiple patients per hour, I literally could not do that. And even though I would know better, because I had the pressures of the time and they wanted you to see as many patients as you could, I couldn't do things the way that felt authentic to myself. And so I love that you kind of explained all of that. Now,
Mhm.
something that you said is, you allow this fascial voice to come up. Now, how can you explain that to the common person? Because I think I know, and if you're in myofascial release, you know what the fascial voice is, but it's not like something is talking to you, or it kind of is, but how would you explain that?
I would explain it as your creative brain and that part of your being that allows you to breathe without thinking about it, that sends blood flow to every cell of your body without thinking about it. It's this internal mechanism, this internal living matrix, and also feedback mechanism essentially that connects your higher mind to the rest of your body and also to your emotions. So it's the piece of you that makes you exactly who you are. Kind of like the 8 billion types of myofascial restrictions, there's going to be 8 billion types of fascial voices. And that to me, that's the feedback mechanism that isn't being picked up by MRIs, X-rays. It's not getting tapped into via talk therapy because it's beyond words. And it's beautiful. It's for some people, it can be a color. For some people, it could be just a sensation. For some people, it's literally words. Sometimes it's song. Sometimes it's unique languages and expressions. It's it's a beautiful expression and feedback mechanism, I think, that connects us to our humanness beyond judgment and into creativity, which is where deep healing and courage and our superpowers exist.
You got it. And so it's very much being in channel three, as just a reminder for those of us who are maybe you're new to this podcast, there's two channels that John talks about, channel five and channel three. Channel five is kind of your judgmental, impulsive, critical side. That's where fear is thought to be. And then channel three is more of your loving, creative, artistic side. And so this fascial voice that you're speaking about, it is what can come up, right? So sometimes people will see pictures or colors. That's more of a channel three creativity thing. Sometimes I might feel emotions, but a lot of times it doesn't make sense. And I want to mention that because it doesn't make sense to the way that you think about things linearly. And that's channel five. Channel five is linear. But your body has its own wisdom that it knows that you just have to take the cap off and allow it to express itself. And so many times, especially with new patients that I have, I'll say like, hey, I'm going to be working on, let's say, your shoulder. And something that might happen is you might feel a sensation not even where my hands are. And that's totally normal. It happens all the time. But if you feel that, feel free to relay that message for me. And so
Mm-hmm.
I remember working with a climber and I was working on their shoulder. So I was doing an arm pull technique where you take the slack out of the system, you hold the arm and you hang off of it like a jet ski. I mean, not to that degree, but that's the arm pull technique. And I
Mm-hmm.
could see that he was a little bit maybe uneasy because it felt like he wanted to say something, but he was almost embarrassed to say it. And he was like, yeah, I know you're working on my right shoulder, but I feel something in my left hip. And that's the fascial voice. It's not going to make sense because you're going to try to figure it out. And if you are trying to figure out the fascial system, because of its properties and how it functions, it's just not going to happen in the way that you think. And so I
Mm-hmm.
love the way that you explain the fascial voice. I think everybody has it within them, but it's can you learn to exercise trusting it more? Because a lot of times it's not going to make sense linearly, but it's almost like you referred to it as your higher self. It's almost
Mhm.
like your higher self is trying to whisper to you, hey, do this thing. Can you feel this thing? But
Yeah.
more often than not, the fear of the outside world will get you to act differently, right? For example, something that you had mentioned was about, diagnoses as just labels, right? And
Mhm.
if you are a practicing medical professional, you're gonna be like, well, the diagnosis says this, right? But
Mhm.
something that John says is, a diagnosis, all it is a collection of symptoms. And so if you have these collection of symptoms, they're going to say you have this thing.
Mhm.
And if you go to a different doctor, they're going to say, hey, you have this other thing. So it's not as consistent as you think. And the imaging that often accompanies that, more than anything, just elicits more fear in my experience, where it's like, okay, now you see a bulge in your disc. Now there's this fear of like, man, my back is weak, it's gonna give out. Man, if I sneeze, it's the end of me, right? Versus
Mhm.
as a myofascial release therapist, you can kind of meet them where they're at and just say, hey, you got a bulge in your disc, but your hips are a little bit off, you're a little bit tight in the back. If we can just unload some of these places above and below, then you should be fine, right? But
Mhm.
unfortunately, people tend to take action based off of fear. And so, have you ever had that experience where someone is coming to you and they said, my doctor is saying this, but you know better? And
Mhm.
then what do you tell them?
Well, I love the idea of the two worlds being able to work together. So I always take in that information from the doctors, from the surgeons, and I observe what has been presented. And I remember and I remind my patients that fascia does not show up on any of the imaging that they are using to create the diagnosis. So there's a whole day where I go into the pros and cons of diagnostic labels in my program. But in a nutshell, there's pros of having a diagnosis because you at least start with a similar language. You're at least kind of starting a conversation again about something's wrong here. The cons could be that, yeah, people get very attached to that diagnosis, or people are treated with respect to what that diagnosis is. And that's a whole other topic. I do touch on it in my program, but my best answer to that is, yeah, when I have somebody in my clinic and I'm treating them with a diagnosis that is relevant, I also remind my patients and I approach it with the fact that, well, the missing link in this diagnosis is the fascial system. So I treat accordingly, using the precautions that need to be addressed, but also go into it knowing that there's this whole system that has been completely ignored. And that's where I get very excited because I usually see some pretty phenomenal changes that happen. So it's pretty awesome. And then I get into the whole topic of, okay, now that your fascial system is a little bit more open, pain may be shifting, pain may be diminishing, and then that layer of, if you're taking medication, now again check in with your doctor because you may need to alter the medications that you're on, because now you might be taking it in more efficiently, your body's absorbing more, you may need less medication. So it's a therapeutic art. I love how you said that, because it's everybody's unique, and we have to tread with our 100% presence and 100% open-mindedness with every individual case, because we all have different histories, different stories, and different needs, aiming for the result of pain-free and joyful lives.
I love that. I think what I can learn from you is recognizing, hey, we're all trying to help the same person. And so you're going to provide me information that I can kind of use as a starting point.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what we want is for the patient and client to get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
And can we be open to, I love this nugget from John Barnes, can we be open to detaching from the outcome whilst being present?
You got it. All right. All right, Magdalena, how do people find you?
I invite you to come to journeyintofascia.com. That's my homepage for the program. And it can also take you to my clinic page right at the top. So I would say come find me at journeyintofascia.com. All my information is there. And I don't know.
Perfect. I've enjoyed having this conversation with you. Are there any last thoughts you would like to share before we end this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think the future of healthcare is myofascial release. John Barnes has been saying that for a very long time. I'm actually very excited this evening. I'm going to a talk in my hometown, which is headlining that topic. So I can't wait to be a part of that conversation. And I feel like this program, Journey into Fascia, it's the first of its kind. It's comprehensive in the fact that I want patients and I want therapists to have the best of both worlds when it comes to self care. So we get into topics, we get into techniques, and the ultimate goal is you get to a point where you enjoy self care. You love yourself enough to treat yourself daily. 5 minutes, absolute minimum, but why not try 25 to 30 minutes a day?
I needed to hear that. I definitely needed to hear that. Awesome. I'll definitely be taking a look. I'll be going to journeyintofashion.com. I just want to say thank you so much for being open and honest. And it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Unu. I kind of want to offer you something or your listeners something. Can I figure out what my offer? Like, I want to offer you guys a free session. Can I do that?
Yeah, how would you want to do that?
Let me see. Maybe go to journeyintofascia.com and
When you say like a free session, what does that mean? Like a free
yeah,
session?
yeah, so I've got access to, well, because we talked about is it Mother Nature? Let me just see. I've got like 2 days that I can just kind of comp as like a test driver for you.
Okay.
Just figure it out. Was it Mother Nature? Yeah, so it's Mother Nature or Thoracic Heart. Which one do you feel like would would be more receptive?
What's thoracic heart? That one sounds.
Thoracic heart, yeah, it's opening up your chest. So getting into the fascial heart, so opening up, yeah, the ribs. Let's do that one. That one's awesome.
Okay, so I was just curious what it was. I gravitate towards nature, but that one sounds interesting. Let's just do that one.
You exclusive access to both, and
Okay.
then I'll give your listeners access to, let's just say a free gift, and then I'll get them to link on whatever.
Okay, let's just do a sound bit of that real quick, okay?
Okay.
All right, so right before we ended the show, Magdalena wanted to offer me and the listeners of Myofascial Health a very special gift, and so I'm going to have her introduce that.
Awesome. So, for anyone who is curious about experiencing Journey into Fascia 30 Days of Self Treatment Essentials, you can email me hello@journeyintofascia.com with the subject free gift, and I will send you a day, a session, a complimentary session that you can try anytime, any place, in the comfort of your own home on demand.
Thank you so much. All right, that's all we got. I know you got some stuff to go, but thanks again for hopping on this podcast. Can't wait to put it out, and I wish you all the success with Journey into Fascia, and I'm sure I'll see you at a seminar in the future here.
Yeah, I'm gonna be there in March. And how do I send you your gift? How do I send you your gift?
Okay, I thought I had to go to that. Okay, so you could, is it
Oh,
through
I guess
email?
that I want to make it easy for you.
Okay, I prefer that. So you can email me at the letter Q, at completeclimber.com.
Completeclimber.com. Okay, awesome. I'll send that to you, Stat.
Perfect. And then when you said March, are you taking What are you taking?
I'm doing MFR1.
Oh, cool.
Again.
I love that.
Yeah, I wanted to do the series, but my parents decided on this surprise visit, so I can do 4 days and I'm out. But yeah, it's gonna be great. It's great all the time.
Yeah, I'll be in at the end of this month. I was taking equine, so I was just curious which seminar you're taking.
I'm so excited for you. That's gonna be awesome.
Cool. All right, Magdalena. I'll see you. Thanks for listening to another episode of Myofascial Health. I help myofascial release therapists create beautiful websites for their MFR practices, even if they aren't tech savvy. If you're just starting your MFR practice, or you're an experienced MFR practice owner, learn more about how I can help at www.myofascial.health/website.